Hello and welcome to another Writer Showcase. We're at number 91. Soon we will be at 100, and I legitimately have no clue of what we are going to do. But we shall muddle through regardless and see what happens. First off, we have our sagely Beleriot curmudgeon. Always happy to do good work. Let's see. What do we got?
Dracarys, your lord.
Indeed. Always a pleasure to have you. Have you, my friend.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. You'll be here all week.
Not quite all week, but
Close. I might be cutting down on my streaming over the next few weeks while I'm trying to actively search for a job that pays better than Walmart, looks better on a resume, and gets better checks. But we'll see. Anyway.
okay. Incidentally, you're a little muffled.
Oh, is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, I just had to move the mic closer to my face. Let's bring in Carl Saylor.
Fataco!
Hey, why come don't I get a dragon? This isn't fair. We need to divest some of the dragon bourgeoisie of their dragons and redistribute them to the people.
But that's revolution.
Okay, you want a dragon? I'll give you a dragon. I've got Smaug somewhere in the back room.
We already had Smaug for several minutes.
Yeah,
That wasn't Smaug. That's Deathwing from what is it? That's Deathwing from Warcraft. The closest thing to Uncalagon the Black we're ever going to get on screen.
Yeah. Anyway, we had
why couldn't Amazon have bought the rights to the freaking Silmarillion instead of trying to, shoehorn some fan fiction into the Second Age?
Yeah, that would be good, but they aren't going to do it. But either way, here's Smaug. There.
Yeah, screw Lake Town.
Yeah.
They put themselves on the lake specifically to isolate themselves from the peasantry. And that's not cool.
Well, the problem is they're a bunch of dirt broke homeless people. People, basically.
In that case, they all deserved it because they're the unfit.
They're clearly leeching off society, especially the Master of Lake Town.
They're all the unfit anyway. So hey.
That's one thing my uncle used to say. He studied for a few semesters in Moscow, and he came back with an Ushanka. And some of his students said, "Hey, Professor Calgren, is that real rabbit fur?" And he said, "Yeah, it is real rabbit fur, but they were communist rabbits, so they deserve to die."
Communist rabbits, so they deserve to die.
I know. Yeah. Could you think about that? Communist rabbits. What a ridiculous idea that is. No.
Well, the funniest thing is, even in The Hobbit, Alfred yells, "Abandon the cripples."
All right.
Abandon the cripples. Which is that one in? Oh, in Middle Earth. I mean, in the films.
Yeah, in Battle of the Five Armies. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I forgot that Alfred even existed.
We all did.
Yeah.
We all did.
Yeah, he's basically Jar Jar Binks in a lot of ways of Middle Earth, unfortunately.
Jar Jaromir.
Alrighty. So, Valerian, you had time constraints, so you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll dash through my chapter. It's been a while because I think we skipped one or two, and then there was one that I had to skip personally because I had to go out and do some work in a library, so I wasn't able to be on for that one. So we've got and then the one I did do one, but that one I did the Count of Monte Fato, the Count of Monte Cristo in Middle Earth. So, but now I'm doing something serious. I don't know how, but this is this is Margaret Barama, her friend Barama, and their sage Muku. They're in bad odor with the emperor for a number of reasons, mostly because the emperor is a sleazebag. But this next section has to do with Imuni, who is Barama's mother, and she's writing a letter to her daughter Tiyaku, talking and thinking about what is going on at the castle now that Barama is gone, because he's where is he now? Oh right, he's in the far west of the island with Margaret, and they don't know what's going on. Actually, no, they just found out what's going on. I'm sorry, in terms of their fathers getting killed. So I hope some of that makes some sense. Let's get on with this next section really quickly. Imuni was seated at her writing table, trying to write a letter to Chiyaku, who had, not very willingly, returned to court. Since Imuni was largely left alone, she had plenty of time to write letters and diaries. She needed, of course, to be careful. When he could be bothered, Umara, and he is Barama's brother, her son, and he is now in charge at the castle, censored her letters, and anyway, there could be no doubt that a letter to an imperial Sarangi would be opened. It would not do to excite exalted wrath whilst Tiyaku was effectively a hostage at court. But none could keep her from writing altogether. She ranked too high, and she felt a great need to communicate with Tiyaku in this time of loneliness and mourning. Beloved daughter, she wrote, I share your grief at the loss of your glorious father and uncle. Imuni's words were, as always, formal, but the heartbreak was real, even if she had seldom seen Pilamar after going to convent school at the age of 12. Pilamar being her brother. Lady Death's scythe has stricken me with a double blow, stricken all of us. The Warmont teaches us that we must endure adversity with fortitude, and I am blessed to have the support of your elder brother. Your brother has broken radically. She stopped for a moment. No, make that improved. What to say, that he is cruel to the peasants, placing them under heavy burthens in tribute and labor, and punishes them harshly for missing a day's labor on account of illness? No, that will not do. Your brother has wisely increased tribute and labor due from the peasants. This, combined with economy, will doubtless greatly improve the health of the estates. Both Imuni and Tiyaku knew full well that economy wasn't Umaran's strong point. He wisely and generously lends to the peasants and punishes them condignly if they will not pay. This was an understatement. Instead of giving needy peasants handouts of food or clothing, he would make loans. And when, as commonly happened, the peasants were unable to pay off the loans with interest, by the established term he would enslave them or even lock them in the dungeon, which had perhaps been underused by the previous regime, until their families coughed up the money. The best one could hope for was that he would forget about the loan, since he was too lazy to keep good records. Also, he didn't torture much, for the same reason. In short, if you're one of Umaran's peasants, pray that his laziness get the better of his cruelty. Imuni had at first tried to persuade him that this policy was foolish as well as cruel and unjust, asking, would it not be wiser to help them produce more? But when it became obvious that she wasn't listening, she had given up. In theory, the law should have protected the peasantry from the worst exactions, but there was no reliable way to enforce the decisions of the jurists if the powerful did not want them enforced, or it was at any rate very difficult. One could almost always find an opposing jurist in any case. Not that Umaran had bothered. He found the law annoying. I help the poorer peasants with gifts as best I can, Imuni continued to write. For is not Karat's name Mercy? She paused for a moment and put down her pen. Even the vassals and high officials, unless they be among Umaran's cronies or henchmen, do not have it easy, she reflected. Garawada listened to different opinions. Umaran rarely does. Umaran does what he will, and that changes by the hour. Even those in his good graces often fear they will not last. This was true. A typical meeting involved Umaran saying, I think we should increase the interests on loans to 5/12. What do you think? And the sycophant saying something like, Great One's wisdom astonishes us. And the count saying, Good. Let's drink for wine, waka'a, and women. Being a sycophant was fun, apparently. But Imuni had no taste for that sort of thing. And waka'a is a drug. And this thing is mistyped. Pardon me a moment. Yeah. It won't do to put that in a letter, though, Imuni realized. Your brother rules with a firm hand, she wrote, and is praised by all the high officials. I do not doubt that he grieves with us, but is nonetheless able to find joy in life. I am also pleased to say that he is kind to slaves. Well, to two slaves in any case. She thought. Baba and Gaga take pleasure in serving him, but in ways that do little honor to the castle. They are hated and despised by all save Umara and his sycophants, perhaps even including the sycophants. Whence is this Gaga come, anyway? She will say little of what she has done before coming here, and Umaran does not trouble himself to learn. The truth was that Gaga had fled from Ikhalamu, the province of Ikhalamu, to avoid getting executed for her role in the death of the Countess Markaruna. Now that Count Pilamar was dead, there was no one to keep the Castellan, who shared his master's suspicions, from exacting revenge. She had understandably said as little as possible about this upon arriving at the castle of the Ambata. As slaves, Baba and Gaga have no recourse, however hollow, if they displease Umaran, so they are blindly loyal. And I greatly fear they have little in the way of moral scruples. These two slaves willingly served as Umaran's spies and agents, and did most of his dirty work. Unpleasant things were wont to happen to any who durst oppose him openly, or even secretly. I dare not speak of such things, nor write of them. If we could but meet face to face, and I could speak all that I hold in my heart. Imuni steadied herself, took a drink of sorrel tea, and resumed writing. Your elder brother leaves me in peace, granting me, as you know, my own quarters, albeit not very good ones by the standards of her rank. I spend my days in sewing, reading, and taking walks on the castle grounds and in constant prayer. I read a little from the Waramot every day and take great consolation therein. Every day I say a prayer for the souls of your father and uncle. Imuni paused again as memories flooded into her mind about her days with Garawada raising their children together. Barama's curiosity and adventurousness. Tiyaku. Well, before she reached the age of 12 and started associating with the flashy set, she had been very keen on art. Then, around her 12th birthday, she had seemingly changed overnight to a snobbish and sarcastic would-be jet-setter. She is wiser now, though. Perhaps she was mainly trying to fit in with her friends. What the? Her friends. A second. Okay. And Umara? She reflected, he was always insolent and undisciplined, and being in the army only made him worse. He never seems to have outgrown the feeling that he should be able to do and have whatever he wants. He has no notion of courting the affections of his people. He neither knows nor cares that many resent his misgovernment. Indeed, Umara's toadies were ever on the lookout for hidden enemies, putting far more effort into it than he did. Exalted must take much of the blame, she thought. He charged dearly for the honor of the countship, and Umara must make up for the lost income somehow. But with some economy, he could have done that without increasing the exactions on the peasantry beyond what they can reasonably bear. Many times have I warned him that this would only increase the hostility of those whom Sacred Nine has placed under him. With power comes responsibility, and the more harshly they are punished, the more hostile they become. Garawada, my husband, my murdered husband, he understood these things. Those who comply only out of fear will not serve you diligently. This is well known. My only consolation is that Umara dare not touch me, and that I can do some good. But I can only do so much, since Umara has the title and exalted ear. In short, the castle of the Ambata was a much less pleasant place, and Umara, for now, ruled a supremacy could be bothered to. The only restraining influences were Imuni. Not that he listened to her, but he didn't interfere with her much either, and his basic laziness. Imuni shook herself out of her reverie and concluded the letter. Aside from our shared sorrow, I am well. I wish you much joy at court, daughter, and pray that Ishtaka, Ru, and Jamara may extend to you every blessing. She placed the letter in a green and black envelope, sealed it, and rang for a maidservant. Give this to the Chancellor, she ordered, and tell him to send it to splendid Sarangi Tiyaku. The maid curtsied, took the letter, and left. Would that these things had never come to pass, Imuni sighed, and resumed her reading of the Waramod, which was frequently interrupted by tears. So that's that.
The fact that the guy is alive proves that the hitman I hired sucked.
What? Oh, welcome.
Alright, is this working? Sorry about
Yes.
that.
Yes, fine. I just was a little confused because I finished my thing and then suddenly we got that the clip came on and was like, what is even happening?
Gotcha. Yeah, Dan, I didn't even see what clip you showed. What was it? Can you play it again?
The fact that the guy is alive
this
proves that the hitman I hired sucked.
Oh yeah, that's fitting. I hope this sounds alright. How's the mic?
Sounds good. I like it.
Sounds good.
Alright. I am scrambled, not ready. Sorry, Balerian, I completely missed yours. I was rushing to get home. Can I go last or whenever?
Sure.
Yeah, I can go next. That's cool.
Awesome,
Okay.
awesome.
Any reaction to my chapter, or we're just gonna move on?
Let me think.
It's
Very
I
dense.
we would understand it better if we heard the other. If we'd been hearing it along the way.
Sorry, you broke up a bit. Sorry,
Sorry, am I breaking up?
you broke
you
up a
broke
little bit.
I feel like it's just a matter of missing context. I feel like we haven't. It's more like we haven't been hearing enough of this to really understand what's been going on.
Yeah.
Remember the big spectacular execution by the Mad King, but beyond that, it's a little unclear. But I do like the stuff that it's going on. It does set up the atmosphere very nicely.
Okay, so the atmosphere is good. I mean, the problem is, like, it's been a while since I even read from this because, like, there were like at least 2 weeks I had to skip. There was 1 week where we just didn't do it, full stop. There was another week where on Friday, unfortunately, I had to go out and do research, so I wasn't able to read that time. And also, one of the times when I did read, I was reading from the Count of Montefato, the Count of Monte Cristo in Middle Earth, because I hadn't done that in a while. So that's that. So it's a little unclear what's going on, but at least it has atmosphere, and you can see the class stuff that's going on.
I can also I do think the work with Barama's mom, that was the character, Imuni.
Yes.
I could definitely see what's going on with her. I think that you did a good job with her character. Some of the other stuff around it, I was kind of having trouble following.
Because sometimes I'm taking a break from having her say things, and the narrator is saying things. So maybe that's the bit that's confusing. But at least if her character is working out okay, then that's good, because I wasn't sure. But if at least her character works out all right. Yeah, in the context of reading, there's punctuation that helps to make it a bit clearer, because then you can use the quotation marks and stuff and it's clear who's that it's her thinking, or it's the narrator that's thinking or talking. But when I'm reading, it's not always clear. So sometimes I had to add every now and then, she thought or she reflected, because that would be obvious when reading it, but not necessarily when hearing it read.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation.
Okay, are we ready for some Shenna now?
Yes.
Oh.
Let's go.
So, as you may recall from last week, Shenna decided to join Talene on her patrol. And we're starting off on this patrol right now.
Shenna, pardon me.
Okay. And so what exactly do we look for on a patrol? Shenna asked, holding the glass moon out in front of her as she walked. Just keeping a lookout on things, Talene said. Back of the month, and there ain't much doing tonight, so we're just making sure nobody gets too rowdy. I see, Shenna said. Don't need to keep the moons at the ready much tonight anyhow, Talene continued. You can toss that back in your pocket if you want. My what? Your pocket, Talene pointed, Right down there. Shenna followed Talene's finger down to her hips, where a scrap of fabric had been clumsily sewn to the side of the trousers. She inspected the patch. Sure enough, the top had been left unstitched, making a simple pouch. An identical patch pocket clung to the trousers on the other side. I just assumed those were mending patches, Shenna muttered as she slipped her 2 glass moons into the pockets. Was this sort of pocket common in Accra? It didn't seem like a particularly sensible design for a pocket, at least not compared to the sort of belt pockets favored by the wealthier folk back in Riverwatch. Not the least because a belt pocket could easily be switched out, as it wasn't directly attached to any particular garment. Shenna supposed a stitched-on pocket like this might suffice if a person couldn't afford a larger belt pocket, as long as they remembered to empty them before laundry day. So pads, Talene said, turning her attention to Padrig. Been a while since we last bumped heads. How you keeping? Padrig and Talene quickly struck up a casual conversation, as old friends were wont to do. Shenna listened in, occasionally asking a question of her own or remarking on this or that, but generally letting the conversation flow. From what she gathered, Padrig was much like Talene. He'd lived all his life in Accra, and his family had also potted away the bread, as the local metaphor went, to pay his way into the magisterium. It was a fairly typical origin, as Shenna was beginning to understand. As the trio wandered along their way, Shenna took in the view of the sleeping city. The canals in the old city tended to be narrower than elsewhere in Accra, with bare south-facing walls illuminated by the lights from the north-facing side. The buildings, rarely less than 4 stories high, tended to crowd out the sky. Not that it mattered much, what with but the brightest of stars being washed out by stray light. Every so often, a pleasure barge would float by, a lantern affixed to its prow, or they would pass by the brightly lit entrance to a small tavern. Other than that, the stillness of night reigned, challenged only by Padrig and Talene's conversation. So Shen, Padrig said, and Shenna jumped slightly as the question caught her off guard. That time back at the 3 Bridges when Gare got shoved into the drink. Was that you? Yes, that was me, Shenna admitted, grateful for the night to hide the redness soaking into her face. How long would it be before she could finally forget that incident? Ha! Good on ya, Padrig said. We're a long time coming at him, if you ask me. Oh, I quite agree, Shenna said. You don't know the half of it, Padrig continued. I roomed with Gare for the past 2 course rounds. You know, he used to have girls over in the room when I was on walk duty. What a guy. Shenna saw Talene's hand shoot up to her mouth to stifle a giggle. After a time, the cool night air began to tingle with the distant sound of merriment, and soon after the trio rounded one last corner into an alleyway and emerged onto a broad thoroughfare. The walkways were bustling with activity despite the late hour. Hawkers and water sellers proclaimed their wares as though it were still midday, and patrons slipped in and out of taverns and began to clumsily flirt with passers-by or drunkenly haggle with a nearby lamp guide for passage. Every now and again, a loud splash would announce that someone had stumbled over the edge of the walkway, and a wave of laughter would ripple out across the crowd. You ever been down this way come nighttime, Shen? Talene asked as the trio waded into the crowd. I've seen it once from a distance, Shenna said, not really paying attention as her head swiveled this way and that, looking for a lamp guide that might possibly resemble Yannick. Me and Pads, we come down here all the time, Talene said. We know all the sights. We'll point them out at you as we go. And so they continued along the walkway, weaving through people and avoiding the occasional palanquin. Sure enough, Talene and Padrig pointed out each building as they went, giving a quick explanation about each one. There was the usual collection of taverns and music halls, of course, but there were also larger buildings, like the Redstone Racecourse, a vast fairground surrounded on 3 sides by row upon row of towering stone seats. Horse races were the most common event here, but hardly a day passed without some sort of athletic competition, whether a foot race, a gymnastic exhibition, a dueling tournament, or any number of attractions. Padrig pointed up to the top of the seats, where the dim silhouette of towers rose high above the seats themselves. Atop those towers, he claimed, great mirrors focused light down upon the stadium so that events could even be held at night. Then there was the Palace of Marvels. According to Talene, its many halls were filled with all manner of curiosities and wonders, important historical artifacts, masterful works of art, the bones of long-dead creatures painstakingly reassembled with plaster and wires. There was even a glass house where people could marvel at exotic plants from the warm, humid lands of the south. Its gates were closed at this hour, of course, but during the day a single Chalk would buy admission, and a Shem would buy a private tour. After that came the Grand Concert Hall, a large building of ornately worked stone, nearly 6 stories high, brightly lit, and with faint music trickling out through its tall, narrow windows. In front of the hall, an offshoot of the main canal split the walkway, forcing pedestrians over a high, arcing bridge, and just below the entrance, a small stone harbor of sorts was completely filled with pleasure barges. A vast queue snaked out around the harbor, slowly filtering through the main entrance. Strangely, Talene didn't have much to say about that particular building, and Padrig simply shrugged and muttered, "Boring music for rich people." As for Yannick, he was nowhere to be found. Shenna had just resolved to approach a nearby lamp guide and ask if they knew Yannick when Talene and Padrig abruptly turned a corner onto a side alley. "Where are we going?" Shenna asked. "There's a gaming den not far," Talene said. "Should be a nice place to drop a few hours, Shen?" Shenna took one last look out across the canal walkway and, well, that was that. "Sure, why not?" she said, trying not to sound defeated. It seemed she would not be meeting Yannick tonight. Compared to the main thoroughfare, the alley's ways were almost deserted, and the further down the side canals they went, the softer the noise of the crowds became. There were no lamp guides here either, though there was still the occasional traveler scurrying past in the darkness. Talene and Padrig no longer pointed out the buildings as they passed, though with no more significant landmarks evident and nothing but identical featureless structures, Shenna could hardly blame them. After a few minutes, the trio stopped outside a featureless doorway in a similarly featureless south-facing wall. Padrig knocked 3 times, and then slowly twice more after a few seconds. The door creaked open just enough for a tremendous man to glare back through. "How can I help you?" he said in a rumbling voice that gave no indication that he intended any help whatsoever. "We're here to see Kedrin," Padrig said calmly. "And how is it that you know Kedrin?" the man said, his glare never wavering for a moment. "He's an old friend of mine from back in Parna," Padrig said slowly and deliberately. It sounded like a password or code phrase of some sort. The man's eyes flickered to Shenna and Talene. "All 3 of you?" "All 3 of us," Padrig nodded. The man slowly nodded back and opened the door the whole way. "Second floor, first doorway on the left," he said, settling himself back down onto a stool beside the door. "Enjoy your evening." Shenna followed Talene and Padrig through the doorway and into the corridor beyond, squinting into the sudden darkness when Padrig put out his lamp. The walls appeared to be made of the same dark red stone as the rest of the buildings in the district, though not quite so rough as the exteriors. The air was also warmer and heavy with some rich fragrance that Shenna didn't recognize, though she was fairly certain that it was emanating from the row of oil lamps along the walls. They were the first oil lamps Shenna had actually seen since arriving in Acre. Most other places she had seen favored the more conventional magical flames. "What's in those lamps?" Shenna asked. "Whale oil and Karitsa bark extract," Talene said. "Smells nice, don't it? Kedrin gets it imported from down in Kuar. Does the whole building up like this. Always the best for old Ked, Shen? Also helps keep the place on the down low," Padrig added as they approached a spiral stairwell at the end of the corridor. "Ain't buying so much magic this way. Keeps the Maggies from looking too hard." "This establishment, it's not criminal, is it?" Shenna whispered the question. Gambling hadn't exactly been forbidden in Riverwatch. Indeed, it was all but impossible to stamp it out completely. But the town elders had rarely passed up an opportunity to express their disdain for the practice. Shenna hadn't yet learned the prevailing opinion here in Accra. Don't worry about it, Talene said as they stepped out onto the second floor and passed through another doorway into a small antechamber where a woman sat at a desk beside another door, beyond which the muted sounds of merriment could be heard. Good evening, and welcome to Master Kedrin's House of Fortune, the woman began. Yet as she rose from her seat, her eyes met Shenna's, and recognition struck both of them like a gong. Iseldra? Shenna exclaimed. She looked again. It was indeed Iseldra at the desk, though she hardly looked as Shenna remembered her. Her hair, once bound up in a neat amber bun, now poured over her shoulders in long, straight golden waterfalls. Her face, before only lightly and subtly accented with cosmetics applied in careful touches, had been all but buried beneath a blanket of powders, salves, and creams. Still, the look of shock in Iseldra's eyes was enough to dispel any lingering doubt. This was she. Whatever are you doing in here, darling? Iseldra blurted out, though she quickly regained her composure. It's just that, well, I hardly expected to find you in an establishment such as ours. I could say the same to you, Shenna said. I thought you were still working over in Taylor's Landing. There a problem out here, new girl? Said a rough voice as a large mountain of a man squeezed himself through the doorway beside Iseldra. It's no problem, Keds, Padraig said. Evening pads, towels. The man, Kedrin, flashed a quick smile at the two of them. Been a while since we last bumped heads. How you been keeping? Not so bad, Talene said. Just got us in the field to toss the stones for a bit. Kedrin turned to Iseldra. You know these folks, new girl? Just the one, Master Kedrin, Iseldra said, indicating Shenna. She joins us tonight from the Magisterium. How do you do, Master Kedrin? Shenna said, making a quick bow. Kedrin looked Shenna up and down, his expression careful and intently focused. He could have been considering whether or not to throw Shenna out. And you two? He finally asked, turning his attention to Padraig and Talene. You're also with the Maggies now? Yeah, Padraig said. I see. Kedrin nodded carefully. And, there ain't gonna be a problem with that, is there? Only if we lose, Talene said, and Padraig joined her in a raucous laugh. Kedrin flashed a tight, forced smile and nodded again. All right, then. You three can come on inside. New girl, let's have you take hand on these guests. See that they enjoy themselves tonight. A splendid idea, Master Kedrin, Iseldra said sweetly, and walked over to open the door, revealing the chamber beyond. Padraig and Talene started for the doorway without further ado. Shenna followed after them, although just as she crossed the threshold, she heard Kedrin whispering, Use the good dice. Are you sure? Shenna heard Iseldra's whispered response. We're still down for the evening. I don't care, Kedrin hissed back. I'm not losing this place over a few pissing shem. You do whatever it takes to make sure those kids leave here with more than they came in with. Got it, new girl? Yes, of course, Master Kedrin, Iseldra said, and joined Shenna, Padraig, and Talene in the gambling chamber. And that's where we're going to have to stop this week.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Very engaging.
Bourgeois decadence.
Yes, decadence.
I remember the incident where Shanna pushed, which one was it? Gareth?
Yeah.
Off the
Gareth,
balcony
yes.
into the water because of what he said. So if that's what was referenced to that was a while back, but I remember that.
Yep, that is.
It was memorable.
Very memorable moment.
Yep.
Nice to see Iseldra again, although apparently she's in more or less the same boat that she was before.
Yeah. She had to change jobs.
She had to change jobs, but her employer doesn't seem to be much more enlightened than her previous employer was.
Yeah, funny about that.
Uh-oh.
Capitalism
Yeah.
does that to you, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although
Capitalist pigs.
they're all evil.
Just wait, you're gonna get plenty of that.
Oh,
I like how you describe the big man coming through the doorway, and your voice acting is pretty good. If it works well with the characters.
Thank you. Although I don't think Kedron's going to be appearing in after this.
oh,
He's
is he a spoiler? Does he die?
no, he's just a one-off.
No.
Just a side character, basically, right?
I know.
How do you spell him?
In the next chapter, Kedron died off screen and nobody cared.
How do you spell him?
Kedron,
Yes.
Eryn.
Let's
Oh
see.
boy, is he gonna slip his way into the fanfic?
Kedryn.
Yep.
Do you mean Kedryn or
K.
because you spelled Kerdrin, Kedryn?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
this. Yeah. Okay. Neat.
Okay, because he sounds
Basically exactly how it sounds.
He sounds a bit of a thug, and he sounds like the sort would be a fascist.
What's happening with the connection?
I mean, we're gonna get the distinct impression that he's kinda in with the mob.
Well,
But
we already have sort of that impression. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if this establishment had other business besides just gambling.
I mean, you know, when people do lose their shirts at the gambling tables, I mean, it's you can either throw them out or offer some sort of a consolation prize. And when you have a bunch of young women working the tables, I think you can guess what the consolation prize usually is.
So Shanna
Oh.
just entered from fantasy into Casino by Martin Scorsese.
Fantasy Casino.
No kidding.
We-
No
we've,
kidding.
we've taken a brief detour into a different genre.
Do they have
Yeah.
Do they have magic methods that they used or want to know?
Mhm. I mean, they did mention very, very conspicuously to use the good dice.
Use the good dice. I noticed that.
Yes.
Very suspicious.
The good dice, yes.
Yeah,
10 out of 10. Perfect book. I'm kidding.
you're not
Good
kidding.
reading.
You're not going to be kidding for long.
Yeah, we shall see. We shall see.
They
Yeah, I
don't
like your
sound
writing
really-
style and the pacing and the flow. It's really good. Really engaging. Even when I cut out a few times, which was my bad, I'm still trying to get used to this mobile version. I was still able to get right back in and know what's going on, which is awesome.
Oh, glad to hear that. Mhm. Speaking of which, you got something for us this week, Axela?
Yes, I do. It's so y'all are honored to see the beginning of something new. Well,
This is a glorious moment in the story.
I've done a huge rework to the story that I previously shared. I got about 4 chapters in before I decided I'm not exactly a big fan of this. Like I felt like my writing was good, but the story and the direction it went, it needed to stay in the oven a bit more. So before I get into that, how's the microphone? Is it good right here, or is
Yeah,
this
At the
better?
moment,
That's very good.
Which is better?
I think the first one, the second position.
I'm losing connection.
ASMR.
uh-oh.
Second is too close.
Yeah, that's a bit.
Yeah, does it peak a lot in this position? Yeah,
Yeah.
I figured. I have a loud projecting voice, so it's good to keep it over here. All right, good to know. Good to know.
Project.
Yes, sir. So I have not audio read in a bit, so forgive any stuttering that I may do, but I'm gonna try my best. And if I start to lose connection, please let me know. Is it good right now?
Yep, sounds fine.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
can
I
hear
didn't hear anything, so I thought I disconnected as soon as I said that. All right, cool. Yep. So I'd like to introduce you to Slain rework. It's no longer called Slain. It's going to be called Shamayim, and this is going to be a. I guess it's hard to explain the genre. I suppose supernatural. Yeah, that would be the best way to put it. Action and adventure, I think, something like that. So I would like for you all who were there for the original presentations, and please, if I start to disconnect at any point, please try to grab my attention so I can reread anything I might have missed. Yeah, for anyone who heard the first ones, forget everything you heard because it's going to be the same characters, but there's going to be a lot of changes. First of all, this is in third person. It's not third person. This is in past tense. It's no longer in present tense. And this will be a multi-POV story that changes POVs every single.
I think you dropped. I think we lost him.
Testing.
Yep,
Oh,
you
you're
hear me?
back.
Gotcha
You
now.
died for a moment
that's-
there.
That's strange. Hold on, let me try something. Whenever I'm doing this on my phone because my PC is in storage right now since the move. Yeah, I might have to do a half screen view because anytime I put StreamYard in the background, I notice that I start to lose connection, and that's why I was asking if you lost me, let me know. So how does this sound? It looks like it's working right now.
Yeah, that's better.
Awesome. Okay, so fun fact. The Hebrew alphabet begins with Aleph and ends with Tau, and so the prologue is going to actually be called Aleph to symbolize that, representing the beginning and the end, and the epilogue is going to be called Tau. And so the fun fact is that the first letter of both of those chapters will begin with that very letter. So I just wanted to drop that in for you. So I'm going to present to you guys this prologue. Since this will be quite a lot, so if you have any comments or anything, like you notice any word choices or spelling errors, please leave them in the comments, and I'll look at them all towards the end. Does that sound good?
Yep, we can do that.
All right. Alrighty, Shamayim, prologue. Abba, Nathan cried. Tell me more about the Shamayim, the Shamayim. The young son bounced up and down frantically in a spot in the grass, trying to desperately gather the attention of his father across the campfire. The large man had taken a moment to pause his stories of the Sky Kingdom as he turned the iron rods within the blaze. He flipped his daily catch of fish and harvested vegetables from the garden over the metal spouts carefully crafted within. The father smiled widely as his umber-brown eyes looked up, sparkled by the flaming lights before him. He met the identical curious eyes of his son across from the soothing smells of the rising smoke. You want even more tales of Shamayim, my son? With one hand he flipped the seasoned salmon with a rod, with the other he pointed a finger up at the night stars above. A smile began to form on his face. Of the kingdoms of crystal and glass? The boy's eyes grew wide in eager anticipation. Yes! Ever since the tales had begun, Nathan's mind raced with burning curiosity like the flames before him. With each new story from his father, new and amazing unworldly details emerged that fascinated his young mind. Skies of crystal, rivers of glass, wheels with eyes. Nathan could never get enough. A bellowing laugh thundered from the father's loud projecting voice. Very well! Across from him, he looked at all the members of his humble family. His son, Nathan, a 6-year-old boy, sat just across from him at the fire. He stared with his legs crossed and fingers tapping his sandals as he sat on the comforting grass below. To the boy's left sat his annoyed older sister by 2 years. She rolled her eyes at her brother, for this was the 6th night in a row that he had asked for the stories of the Sky Kingdom. For her, she had already experienced these tales, and though they were mystifying, the darker truths of the kingdom were not so wondrous. The father looked upon his eldest daughter and smiled. Her eyes quickly met with his, and she couldn't help but to look down at the grass as she smiled too. Yerim, the father, looked to Nathan's right, and his beloved wife, their mother Hadara, stood close by his side. She was gently swaying a young soul in blissful rest within her experienced arms. Their newborn baby Their newborn baby son, Reuben, rested peacefully before that soothing flame. In this small village of the heartland, life was simple and blessed for Urim's household. Just outside the great cities nearby, within the massive continent, countless towns and villages just like this one resided all throughout the lands. From Nakamung in the Midlands Desert to luscious Utopia, to Bengalia, to Babel, and the ruins of Mount Zion, the large humble family resided in their large home, built from Urim and his father's own hands as they rested on this night from a hard day's labor. The house being right in the middle of a lush forest, a lone foreign military soldier stood watch not more than 20 yards away. From the leylands, far away from the village, Urim's eyes would look up to see the young man every now and then. Well aware of his presence, the family knew what his purpose was, and why he stood guard here. They respected him, but were also abhorrent. He was part of the colonizers, and the Leylanders haven't always been so kind to native Heartlanders. In fact, they have shown the Heartlanders unspeakable cruelty. With this in mind, Urim's house tried their best to be kind to them, to show love and honor, as not to promote any more war and bloodshed best they could. The soldier lay back against the tree and lit a lone cigarette for himself, as he quietly stood and listened. Urim lowered his eyes from checking on the man and looked excitedly around at his family. Very well, very well, he clapped his hands together loudly. So you want more tales of the Ascendant Kingdom, do you? Yes, yes! A projecting laugh. So it shall be. Behold, a kingdom, distant and mighty, far beyond the ones we know. The father waved his large arms around, reaching out as if finding land in the distance. A kingdom where the kingdom where the seas surrounding it are great, with waves and waters made of flowing glass. A land of hills burning brightly with flames of multiple radiant colors, and where the beaches and sands are made of solid gold. He emphasized the words glass and gold particularly, as if he could not express these unearthly descriptions well enough. Nathan's mouth widened greatly, and he mouthed a silent wow. Imagine, my children, for this kingdom that I speak of is not simply like our kingdoms of the Heartland and of Arats. No, no. Shamayim is a kingdom that radiates with power. He held up a fist and trembled it dramatically. Shamayim, my children, is supernatural. In that kingdom, the trees grow strong and molding and living metal, like that of a blacksmith making a sword. For you see, in Shamayim, living creation too is not like it is here, in our world, in Arats. No, no. In Shamayim, the trees are made of iron. Imagine great and living trees with auroral lights instead of leaves, flowing off of them, like those which light up the night skies of the Icelands. Beautiful lights flowing out of them, just like candles. Lights alive with power and energy for all to see and behold. Urim outstretched his fingers in multiple directions, his gaze looking up to the galaxies and trillions of stars above him in that night sky. The sun's eyes looked up as well, expression awestruck. Such are the things that we mere humans only barely understand about this kingdom. For you see, beloved, he leaned in close as if whispering a great secret. We only know of a few details, since only a few have been. Imagine it, the secrets and unknown wonders that reside there, waiting to be discovered. He leaned back and clapped his hands once, laughing triumphantly. Wow, Nathan said, mouth agape. At this point, Dinah was now leaning in closer, knees bent in front of her, and her arms wrapped around them. She sat comfortably, intrigued. Hadara smiled as she soothingly rocked her sleeping infant. Nathan's mind raced in excitement, as a memory of a past story just like this reminded him of the living creatures his father told about in the kingdom. Holding some of the most bizarre and unworldly descriptions, Nathan smiled widely at the thought of hearing about them again. And the residents, the living things? Nathan squealed. Tell me about the wheels and the creatures again, Abba. The wheels, the wheels, the wheels! The father laughed as he smiled wide. He leaned in closer to the children and he waved his hands vehemently over the fire. Behold, many strange and bizarre living creatures, vast and wonderful all across the lands of Shamayim. From the millions of untold trillions of hosts of flying wonders, wheels turning within wheels, equipped with wings and eyes flying in those skies. Chariots ablaze with flames and horses made of lights. Mighty serpents, long and with bodies made of living bronze and silver. Serpents with limbs and wingspans of their own. Serpents who in that land burn strong and mightily with fire coming off of their bodies. Flames of living golden fire. Fire for them does not make them burn. He stopped and swung both of his arms through the flames, stirring them as he spoke every sentence dramatically like a theatrical narrator. Nathan and his sister gasped in reaction, and they both laughed when Yurem flinched and shouted, breaking his axe for a moment to remove one of his hands that got burned. His eyes sparkled at their laughs, and he continued the dramatized presentation. Thus, in the highest Shammai of the Shamayim, meaning many, my children, he quickly added, it all returns and beholds the esteem of the king who rules all over all these wondrous lands. For this king is no ordinary king. No. The king of Shamayim is the most powerful being in all of the cosmos. Nathan mouthed another silent wow as his eyes grew bigger. He recalled a previous telling and another story of one seated highest above all these lands and these kingdoms. Yurem had told him about the splendor and magnificence of this very powerful king, as well as other things that Yurem realized at the time were too deep for Nathan to understand. A lamb with multiple eyes, 7 bowls, 7 trumpets, and a great and powerful spirit. Nathan simply didn't understand it. In time, my son, he recalled his father saying back then. In time, you will grow to understand. Nathan looked up at his Abba now, and the man quieted down to attend the cooking meats on the fire. He smiled as he removed the sizzling meats and vegetables from the flames into a plate, the fire continuing to rise and burn bright into the cold, dark sky. As Nathan looked at him and thought deeply, another question came to his mind. Can we go to the Shamayim, Abba? Are we able to take a trip and to see the seas of glass? Yurem looked up at the boy and he smiled deep, only for it to fall slowly. He shook his head in disappointment. Only those chosen and worthy by its king, and only for so long as he allows them. Let me reread that. And only for as long as he allows them. He slowly leaned forward and placed down the iron rods. For you see, my son, as far as we can tell, the creatures and the hosts of Shamayim can come down from their descents, but we and them are unable to rise up in them ourselves, let alone the greatest and highest ascent of it. That is only if the king wills it and allows them to. And for our forefathers, they were the only few men in history who were allowed to visit him. By the way, is my connection good? Did I cut out at any point?
Yep, I'm hearing you.
Awesome. Good, this is working. Nathan nodded slowly in disappointed understanding. His eyes sparked up, though, as he quickly thought of another idea. Then we should send a request to visit that king, Nathan shouted across the flames. Let's bring him gifts like we do the kings of Arats. We should go and pay him respects and ask him to let us see his kingdom and to see the seas and the wheels. Yurem laughed deeply and his smile returned. He loved the innocence and adventurous nature residing in his son. Perhaps one day he may allow you to do so, my boy. Yurem bellowed out as he pointed at Nathan triumphantly. Perhaps you may one day be worthy to meet the king and be given the honor to be a Nabi, a visitor of the king, just like these forefathers I spoke of. Nathan squealed and laughed in excitement as Yurem chuckled to himself. His smile became devious as he thought of another detail that he knew would spook and mesmerize the children. Yes, and look, see, one of these very Nabi forefathers I speak of. He wrote what he saw when he visited the king, and look, he saw great beasts within the throne room, as well as more thrones surrounding the great king, all seated with elders. He paused as he tried to put away the massive, devious smile forming on his face. And these 4 living beasts, they were unlike any here in our world, for you see, their bodies were completely covered with eyes. He jumped forward and held out his hands, and the children fell back startled at his shout. Nathan laughed. Ew! The sister waved her hands and rubbed her body as if there was a leech on her skin. She closed her eyes and turned her head back and forth. Ew! Abba, no! Why? Nathan giggled as he looked at his repulsed sister. He immediately stood up and held his hands to his face, moving each finger up and down randomly as he blinked each eye one by one. Ooh, my wings and body are completely covered in eyes. I am blinking each one at you one by one. A sharp scream and squeal shot out of the girl. She kicked Nathan in the shin, sending him crashing down to the ground. Nathan! Nathan laughed loudly as he fell to the grass, stumbling only for just a moment. He quickly got up and began to chase his sister, holding his hands above his head. He moved his fingers around randomly like spider legs as he deepened his voice and chased her. Dinah, I gaze upon thee with 100 eyes. I blink at you with them each one by one along my entire body. Be not afraid. Dinah screamed and laughed as she began to run in circles, Nathan chasing behind her. Their feet pounded rapidly in the dirt around the campfire where the grass ended, as it flew into tornadoes of dust all around the two parents. The soldier on the tree tapped a cigarette against it and humphed to himself as he continued smoking and listening. In all this, Urim could not stop laughing. His hands clasped his knees, and his wife began to yell in her native tongue, trying to speak over the children's screams and dust tornadoes. Suddenly, Reuben began to wake and cry. Flustered, the children's mother shouted again at the two siblings running and laughing, but they did not hear her. Nathan! Dinah! Shema! Knock it off! You've woken Reuben! At that word, the father instantly aligned eyes with his wife. Reading them and seeing the baby crying, he shot quickly into action. Just making a lap around him for the 5th time, Urim reached in front of them quickly and caught their attention with a single snap of his fingers. Hey! Shema! Listen and obey. The two children immediately understood. They quickly moved to their original spots and sat down without hesitation. Although the giggles from Nathan still persisted, he tried, desperately as he could, to keep them hidden. Dinah, face reddening as she tried to hold back a laugh herself, quickly elbowed him. This only made Nathan's giggles blurt out louder as he could not hold them back. Before they knew it, Dinah was laughing loudly too, and Nathan was on his back, holding his stomach. Urim's smile widened quickly at their laughs, and his heart delighted in the quickness of their obedience. He quickly shot up from his seat and ruffled both of their hair with his 2 hands before sitting back down and hearing their squeals and high-pitched giggles continue. Making shushing sounds, the mother tried to quiet her baby boy, correcting her messed up black hair. Dinah immediately took notice. She quickly got up and moved towards the disturbed little one. Mama, let me. I'll carry him, Dinah whispered, as Reuben's quiet cries increased in volume. Her mother nodded, and she gently passed the child to her daughter. Dinah sang softly, as her arms holding her brother swayed ever so gently, like the soft rocking of a fisher boat residing within a peaceful pond. Shacha, 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 she quietly sang, the lyrics slow and the song calm. Smiling deeply, the father caught the umber eyes of his daughter. Her voice was beautiful, and her gentleness quickly led the little one to quietness, as she continued. Eventually, she soothed him to sleep with gratifying, peaceful music. Kerut, Seged, Kerut. She was a natural, and Urim smiled deeply. Her teeth showed wide from singing while she smiled back. He was so very proud. Looking back to the hungry eyes of his curious son, the father breathed deep as he quieted his voice this time, finishing the night's tale with a quiet completion. Look and hear, my son. The kingdom of Shamayim is powerful and wonderful. See the power that radiates from that place, the lights that come from the trees, and the powers that reside within. You see, it can also be here with us, the essence of the king who controls it all, and his mighty Ruach. That power can also flow to us down here in Aratz, and with the king's and with the king's permission, we can do wonders with it. He waved his arms around, looking at the trees and the dark horizon. With the power that flows in that place, here in our world, we can heal injuries, change hearts and nations. The power can even raise people from the dead. He waved his arms high as Nathan moved back and... Oh, what just happened here? Hold on a second. Am I still... Okay, I'm still on StreamYard. Hold on, the app closed. Let me open it back up again. All right, if I disconnect, let me know. So I'll repeat that. This power can even raise people from the dead. He waved his arms high, and Nathan moved back, startled and awed at him. I can go on and on about Shamayim, my son, and one day you may be able to tap into this marvelous power too. Behind them all, along the trees of the forest, a cigarette fell to the soil. The soldier who was listening had turned his head, staring sharply at Urim. The father quickly stopped himself and looked up. The man's blue retinas were fierce and warning. His light-skinned face was stern. His hands resided upon the holster of an assault rifle, lodged neatly onto his belt. He shook his head slowly. Urim blinked and nodded. His smile completely collapsed into a frown. frown. He did not break eye contact.
You there? Did you break up? I think we lost him.
I'm right here. For some reason, it's not letting me do a split screen view anymore. That was working out pretty good. Here we go. Let me mess with this a little bit. We're almost done. We're almost at the end, but because I'm on mobile, when I'm in Google Docs and I leave this app in the background, it disconnects. Did you guys did you hear any of that?
We missed the last 2, I think like minute or so.
Okay, gotcha. Hold on, let me try to figure this out. Why can't I do split screen?
Is he there? Yeah.
Don't know what's going on with this. All right. This time I'm in Google Chrome with it. Hopefully that'll help. Let me know if I disconnect again. Can you hear me just fine right now?
Yep, I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, so here, let me go up a little bit. So the soldier looked at him and shook his head slowly. Urim blinked and nodded. His smile completely collapsed into a frown. He did not break eye contact. Urim slowly placed a hand up for reassurance. His wife followed it to see what he was doing, and when she saw the man in his posture, she immediately understood. Her smile died fast, and when the children saw her, theirs did as well. They did not need to turn around to understand. Placing his hand back down, slowly, Urim opened his mouth. His hands clasped together and his voice was lower. There is a darker truth to these tales, though. The breeze blew gently as the flames of the fire flickered with it.
You there?
You did die.
Man, unbelievable. Can't do this on a phone anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Give me a second. Okay, let's see, how do I... Let me close a few more apps. Maybe that might be causing issues. Does Streamlabs have its own app? Because that would be nice if they did. Am I going through?
As far as I'm aware, it's just a browser thing.
Okay. Yep, tell me as soon as I disconnect again. Okay, so there is a darker truth to these tales. There are events that you children may already know. Events in the Shamayim that, well, I most likely have already told you many times. He paused and the two women nodded, and Nathan only stared. Urim looked at him specifically. I will tell it again. He looked back up and met with the eyes of the soldier. The man did not ease up. He was still on edge, hand on weapon. Urim nodded as if to reassure him. Some of the beings of Shamayim, these very wondrous creatures and living things I told you about tonight, some of them have purposefully chosen to betray their king, and some of them have chosen to harm humans, all the way down here in our world. The crickets chirped louder. The breeze could be heard from the sharp silence. Urim leaned forward and fidgeted with his hands held together. He took a few deep breaths. This wasn't the direction he intended to go with the stories. At least not yet. He wanted his son to at least retain his innocence for as long as possible. But with the Leylander soldier eyeing him dangerously like this, with his weapon ready in hand, he knew he had no choice. There was once a time, my beloved ones, where greed, curiosity, and pride came in. He sighed as he paused. There was a being, a celestial creation by the king, a beautiful and gorgeous man in the highest Shamayim. He was magnificent and was highly esteemed. He was overcome with his own beauty, and he questioned his place under the king. And he reasoned to himself that he could overthrow the king and take the throne for himself. Therefore he gathered a large following of the living creatures of Shamayim around him, about a third of their extremely vast numbers. Just check on this.
You just cut out.
What about now? Oh no, I paused. I'm going back and forth between the apps to keep myself connected. He paused as he slowly looked around. Frown deep and eyes intense, Urim looked at everyone listening, even the soldier. This rebellion in the highest Shamayim led to that war, and this war led to a casting out. For you see, he failed. This king and his armies of servants were far too powerful for this traitor, and so his coup attempt failed. As a result, the traitors were thrown out and banished from that kingdom. He looked around at his family. His wife had hands held together in front of her. She watched her daughter with care, as she moved her eyes sadly back to her husband. Dinah continued to sway her brother with gentleness, as she looked up slowly from the sleeping baby into her father's eyes. Her expression was still unhaunted. This is the part that she had dreaded, and the part Urim did not want to tell his son, not tonight at least. When Urim looked down to Nathan, fear filled.
You're dead in the water.
How about now?
Who's back?
Okay. Urim sighed. As a result, these exiles, these traitors, now live disgraced among us, even all the way down here in Aretz. They can see us, but we cannot see them. He added as he looked around. These traitors, these exiles, are violent, and they have their hateful eyes sent against us. Be aware of them, my children. Be alert. The soldier nodded his head as he looked around, as if to search for them. His hand was still on the rifle, but his posture was not as intense. However, Urim pointed at his chest, and he looked at each family member one by one. Give me a second. It has been a passed down gifting, a blessing in this family, from my father and his father before him. We have a gift, a foresight. You, my boy, and you as well, Dinah. He pointed at Nathan and his sister. May one day be able to see these things, these fallen ones, the king's enemies. Nathan gulped. His eyes were wide with terror. Shushing, Urim continued as if to reassure him. Do not be afraid. They influence us, and they manipulate us, but they cannot control us. Always remember this, my children. There are unseen forces that war against us, and we can fight back. He paused as he looked at each family member with an intense gaze. No matter what they do, no matter how much they corrupt your emotions, nor what crafty words they say into your ears, they are vengeful and angry souls for being exiled from their first estate, and because they cannot fight the...
You're out. You cut out.
Testing.
You're back.
Hello, hello. Excellent. Let me repeat that sentence again. Almost done. They are vengeful and angry souls for being exiled from their first estate. And because they cannot fight the king, they instead target us, and they take out their anger on humanity. Heed me now. You must never listen to their words. The soldier raised his hand off the rifle. Satisfied, he instead calmly reached down for a cigarette pack, followed by a lighter in his other hand. He raised the white tip tobacco to his lips. He continued to stare intently at the family as he lit a fireplace of his own, just under his nostrils. Breathing in the smoke deeply, he exhaled fumes of gray into the crickets chirping in the leaves above him. He leaned back on the trunk of the wood and looked off into the night. Urim breathed out a deep and resounding sigh. He sat back into his chair, relieved and sweating. Nathan looked up after staring at the ground. A question had formed within his mind. Do they wield that power? Nathan's question caught the attention of everyone, even the soldier. Stuttering and nervously looking around, Nathan quietly continued. The radiating power from the trees and skies, Abba, that flow in Shamayim, even down here, can Can they use that power on us? Whispering the last two words as if they were taboo, Nathan watched Urim sigh deeply as his father thought about the question. A sharp look pierced him like a sword from the soldier. He looked back at the man sternly, and then a reluctant nod slowly fell as he looked back at his son. Not like they once did, but yes. The silence intensified. Urim took a deep breath. The exiles of Shamayim reside in that in-between place, an invisible barrier and a plane of existence from our own, and yes, they trick men into seeking that power. Power that, well, when used wrong, can have devastating consequences. Power that they like to trick mankind into striving for selfish motives. With the same powers used to heal wounds, raise the dead, and perform miracles, some humans seek it out and cast spells, incantations, and pervert creation with terrors unheard. He leaned forward to his children as he clasped his hands together. These people are dangerous. They serve the exiles, our enemies, and they work on their behalf. Quick footsteps from the soldier quickly caught all of their attention. I've lost many boys, you know, the young voice loudly called out, intruding his way in. Emotions were clearly escalating, and everyone turned to see him, fuming below the surface. Many good men died in this war, you know. Spells, incantations, communing, the whatnot. He waved his hands around with each word, scoffing at them with clear disgust. He stomped his boot aggressively into the dirt before the fire, and he raised his chin. Nathan looked and studied the man. He took off his hat and scratched his short blonde hair. He placed it back on and stared, his cigarette never leaving his teeth. Puffs of gray smoke now aligned with that of the smoke of the flames before him. Nathan's eyes looked down from his face and slowly made its way down to one of his hands. It rested on his weapon. Nathan gulped. Your people have caused us a lot of pain, you know, me and my boys. The man continued with teeth holding tight to the tobacco. He slowly shook his head. A lot of folks died because you fools wanted to play with fire from the ethereal plane. He narrowed his eyelids. You talking dreams of fairies and whatnot kings from that so-called place they come from. He scoffed as he put a cigarette out with his right hand and held it near his face. I don't think so. The monsters are threats, and the ethereal plane is dangerous. Simple as that, old man. Mighty fool some to be spreading lies about that place and spreading hope that it's good, only to continue this bloodshed. Wouldn't you think? His look was sharp, and his voice was cold. The family looked fearfully between both men, as for a few moments neither one blinked. Calm, Urim relaxed back in his seat and thought deeply for just a few moments before he chose his next words carefully. Not every shark in the ocean attacks a human who swims on the beach, kind sir, Urim began. And not every human who goes to the beach is foolish enough to throw javelins to provoke the sharks there, as to purposefully anger the beast to attack them. We all understand the danger of the sharks, and that splashing the water when they are present, bleeding out near them, and going too far out risks us being bit by them by accident, or, in some cases, on purpose. Nonetheless, there are those among our people, my people, as you say here in the heartland, who do these exact things. As a matter of fact, there are those all throughout Arats too, who practice magic and cause pain and devastation as well, good sir. He leaned in close and narrowed his eyes at the man. Sorcerers, summoners, communers, the ones you guard us from, the ones who harm us all. They also reside in the leylands as well. Your home continent too, am I mistaken? He blinked and stared. The soldier crossed his arms, lips holding the cigarette tight. He did not answer. Urim continued. These shark hunters I speak of, sir, are wicked men. Men who choose to hunt down the sharks of the ocean. Humans who harvest their sharp and powerful teeth and use them as blades for their spears. Along with this, they aggravate and provoke the sharks. When they see someone they hate at the beach, they soothe them with enticing words into swimming in the waters, only to provoke the beasts into attacking those poor souls for them. You see, young man, these people are wicked, and the rest of us strictly oppose them. And we even bear arms and swords against them alongside you, to protect the ones we love, as well as the ecosystem of the ocean that we respect and cherish. He quickly wrapped his arms around his wife and Nathan, who moved to both of his sides. Dinah moved in closer, and the entire family stared back, shoulder to shoulder at the accusing man. The wisest of us know very well of the ocean's existence, of its magnificent depths, its hidden deep-sea wonders, and of its dangerous sharks and other deadly fish within. Yet, we also know of the riches it provides. its nourishing salts, its delicious fish that we gather on our boats. We dare not follow the examples of the fools who provoke the sharks, nor the ones who use the sharks as weapons. We teach our offspring. He shook the shoulder of Nathan as he continued. And we grant them the wisdom to know all the dangers and all of the blessings the ocean holds, so we can best protect them and keep them safe for the day they will eventually encounter the ocean themselves. Now, kind sir, wouldn't you agree that this is wise? The crickets chirped and the flames cracked low as Urim leaned back in his chair. He crossed his hands and stared at the man, blinking slowly. A simple humph only came out as the man breathed deeply and thought for many moments. He reached up with one hand and held out the cigarette with 2 fingers. He exhaled a very large stream of smoke and stared into the forest. He stared for a while before returning his eyes to Urim. His eyebrows fell and his eyelids immediately narrowed. Curfew time. Lights out. His voice loud and tone aggressive, the man gave no chance for a response. He immediately opened his canteen of water hanging on his shoulder and he poured it all at once over the low burning flames. Like an explosion, massive clouds of thick white steam violently erupted within like a volcano, as the noise violently hissed like a colony of angry snakes. Both Dinah and Nathan yelped as they scurried back away from the sudden eruption. The sizzling grew deafening, and Reuben began to cry again. Hadara quickly beckoned her daughter to give him back to her. The woman and Nathan backed away towards the house, while Urim slowly stood up from his seat and clenched his fists at his side. The 2 men stood still and glared at each other through the steam roaring between them. The soldier held his hand on the weapon, and Urim took note. The soldier then raised his right foot and kicked the base of the campfire. Urim looked down as the man crumbled the creation. The fish that was left over, the iron rods, all of it collapsed into the smoldering white clouds rushing out below. As a reminder, the soldier tilted his head, voice still loud so he could speak over the hissing snakes. Any signs of incantations, spells, or communing on my watch is grounds to be shot on sight. No exceptions. He threw the cigarette through the smoke and it bounced off Urim's chest, falling into the volcanic steaming eruption below. Urim looked down at it and then back into the spiteful blue eyes glaring at him. Urim narrowed his eyelids. Rightfully so. With one last glare, Urim turned around and walked towards his waiting family, back to their home. He unclenched his fist and breathed slowly to calm his heart rate. With his large hand outstretched for Nathan as he approached, the small shaking hand took it gratefully. Feeling the trembling, Urim quickly looked down to meet the timid eyes of his 6-year-old son. "It's okay, my son. It's okay," he softly spoke. "It's okay." He shook his hand firmly as he continued forward. "Reflect on this, Nathan. We battle not against flesh and bone, but against the exiles and their forces that dwell in the high places around us. Hold no resentment towards the colonizers. He is oppressed and he is influenced by them. Love them, care for them, keep them safe in your home as if they were your very own. Remember this above all else. They are not our enemy. He is not our enemy. Forgive him." Nathan blinked a few times as he looked up. He nodded quickly. I don't understand, Abba." Urim smiled and looked at his son with comforting eyes. "In time, my son. In time you will understand." Turning back his head, Nathan took another look at the soldier. The man was now smoking a new cigarette, and his glaring eyes were locked onto the child. He placed his hands in his pockets and raised his leg to kick the campfire again while holding eye contact. This time kicking dirt from the soil, he coated the already ruined campfire with dust from the earth, just for spite, while the steam continued to soar high. Nathan swallowed. Hurt and confusion filled his young mind. He didn't know what to think, what to feel. What was he to make of this? Just as he was about to turn back around, something bizarre caught his attention. It shifted suddenly on the soldier's shoulders. Nathan blinked and couldn't believe what he was seeing. A snake! Wrapped around the soldier's neck and resting on his shoulders, a massive orange, bizarre-looking snake slithered its tongue as it stared at Nathan. Nathan's eyes widened in horror. He stumbled from walking backwards, but he could not turn around and move forward. He couldn't keep his eyes off of it. The soldier did not react. Did he not know there was a snake wrapped around him? It looked at Nathan, curiously. Then it suddenly hissed, and its body wrapped around the man's neck and tightened it as if to strangle him. The soldier did not so much as blink. Nathan did not understand it. Did he not realize that the snake was just strangling him? Nathan blinked numerous times, as now he couldn't see it anymore. It was gone. Nathan looked down from where it was, and the soldier mimicked the snake's almost same exact scowl, and tisked visibly almost as if he was hissing. He turned around and walked away from the destroyed campfire. He held his hands in his pockets as he made his way back to his post. No snake was anywhere to be seen. Nathan blinked rapidly and breathed quickly, panic settling in. He stumbled again from walking backwards, and after hearing his father tell him to walk straight, he slowly turned back around. As he approached the home, Nathan took a few additional looks back around to stare at the soldier and the volcanic white smoke. There was nothing there. It was only a steaming night sky now. That snake would be a memory Nathan could never forget, for that was the first time he had ever seen one, and the first of many strange sights that would be to come in his life. Nathan turned around and walked to his home with his family. The image of the snake's body strangling the soldier and the hateful look it gave Nathan, haunting him as he stared with gaping wide eyes. The way it just disappeared as if it was never there to begin with. It was the first time he had ever seen anything like it. He had never been so afraid. Oh, sorry, that was really long. That concludes the prologue.
No worries. I liked it.
Awesome.
I like.
As I'm reading, I'm realizing a few. I should have practiced this before I did it. I'm like, there's some more editing I need to do that I missed.
Yeah, I get that. One of the things that does jump out at me, one of the particular turn of phrase when you said they happen on this place, your own continent, as you know, that's
Yep.
That's a bit of a bit forced as far as exposition goes.
Oh, that's a good point.
Depending on
the
the
as
scope
you
of
know.
the story, it could be advantageous to include a map.
Right. Yeah, basically, it'll come more prevalent later on, but I thought, for the prologue, I should make it really clear that the Heartland is one continent and the Leylands is another. And yeah, so that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind in the editing.
All right.
Maps are cool anyway. Was this? I said maps are cool anyway.
Yeah.
Was this? You were reading something like this earlier, weren't you? But it was in present tense, and it wasn't as like developed, maybe.
Yes, the original story was, and this is going to be the chapter 2. This is a prologue, so basically him as a kid, Nathan as a child, and the original was him going around and hearing voices talking to him and talking to everyone else as he was getting ready for a wedding, and that was the first time I presented that. And so the story's been changed to where it's no longer voices, but invisible things that we'll get POVs on, actually, in chapter 1 especially. I'm excited to share that one because that one's a trip. And this was to build the foundation because it's a lot. It's a lot to digest and think about. So the prologue serves as the backstory to Nathan's family and also the setting up of the conflict between the two people groups, and also to set up the stage for the invisible world and the things that are, the things that they can't really see.
Well, and I got a little bit of the fall of Lucifer.
Oh, yeah.
How many references did you guys catch in this?
The Paradise Lost bag here, aren't we?
Paradise Lost. What is that? I don't know what that is.
That's the story of Lucifer. How Lucifer
yes.
wanted to be like God and how he fell and decided to sabotage God's great creation.
Mm-hmm. I figured that part would be pretty obvious.
Yeah.
You were going to say something, Dunn?
Oh, I just was like, this is very much a biblical stuff. I noticed the Abba thing, since Abba is the Jewish equivalent of daddy, or the familiar role of familiar aggressive father.
Yes, sir. You know, this is a I didn't want to spoil it right off the bat. I wanted to see if you guys would catch it, which I knew you would. I knew you guys would. You'd recognize something. This is a scripture-based story, based off of scriptural things. It's a fiction, but it's based off of these actual things, and the terminologies are changed a little bit from what you may know them as. You know, instead of demons or Lucifer, it's things like the exiles and the accuser, and etc. etc.
Oh,
I use
the accuser.
Yeah, I use a lot of Hebrew words. Like when he said Abba, that's for father, and then when he describes the Shamayim, that's Hebrew for the cosmos and the heavens, and Aretz is Hebrew for earth. So yep,
Yep, the Shamayim does sound like Hebrew.
yes sir. It's basically a book that's this chapter was I had to be really careful with this because it's supposed to appeal to every audience. You know what I mean? Like this is the most important. The first chapter of a story is easily the most important because you need to hook people, and you need to also not bore people to death. And with a prologue, I figured it would be smart to have the father telling the story instead of it just being walls of text. Just explaining it, right? And also give the background on Nathan and his family. Like it's supposed to both like to the religious, they should read it and go, oh, I know this, and to those who aren't so religious, it should be intriguing.
So,
And that's why I wanted to present it to you guys without saying so. I wanted to see what you would see, what you wouldn't.
accuser, if I'm not mistaken, accuser is what the word diabolos actually means. If I'm not mistaken. But
Oh,
maybe
interesting.
I think so. Or maybe it's shaitan that means accuser. Or maybe they both mean accuser.
Yeah, that's what the word Hasatan means. It means the accuser.
Yeah, I thought that was familiar.
Yep. So let me check the chat now that I actually can. Probably a lot of grammar mistakes. What did you catch anything like that?
Not
I
that I can catch.
don't think so. No.
Not really, but I was kind of away. And
Yeah.
it wasn't
Oh,
away,
thanks,
but I was-
Wolvie. I like the changing accents. That was me trying to distinguish between the multiple characters. I didn't want it to just sound all like me. I was like, yeah, I'm trying to make it a little better for the audio reader to see, And like the soldier had a little bit of an accent, or like he talked like he did, and then the father talked really formally and stuff like that.
Even though it's scriptural, it's also kind of modern because they have guns and cigarettes and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. You caught that. Urim's family is old school, as you can see with the campfire and cooking the wild caught fish, and how they live in their village. Yet, at the same time, the modern world is going on around them. And that's exactly why I put the soldier there.
So
That's
they're
why I
kind
had the cigarette and the auto rifle.
So they're kind of in a subaltern relationship to these other people.
What was the question?
So they're in a kind of a there's an imbalance of power between the people the soldier belongs to and the people that Nathan and Urim and whatnot belong to.
Yeah, you'll see that is going to be really prevalent in the time skip. In chapter 2, it's going to, because there's different POVs, 1 is going to be a completely new character. 2 is going to go back to Nathan, but he's going to be an adult, just like he was in the original telling that I gave of this. And you'll see a lot there, a lot more explanation on what what living is like for them. It's basically, how to explain it, it's similar to the Native Americans. That's the best way I would describe it. It would be the people who are native to the continent, and then these new people come in and they're violent and they destroy things, and they just seem greedy, and so they're trying to make peace with them, but there's just bitterness from the outer people. And so I'll have characters who are leylanders who are like, this is stupid, I hate what my people are doing, and then you'll have the ones told in the parable who harvest the shark's teeth and use it as weapons against the colonizers. as I said, this is going to be a really big, bold story.
Ooh.
I didn't want to make a prologue, but I kind of had to, with how this is designed. And I'm excited to present the chapters to you guys as I go along. I got like 60 outlines so far, and 3 done.
Did you say 60 as in 60?
Yeah.
Damn.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, 3 acts and everything. This goes places. Oh yeah, nice, Wolvie. Yep, I figured that would be a really yeah. How was that engagement wise? A prologue with the dad telling a story to his children.
It's a smart way of getting the exposition out. I think so.
Yep, figured that'd be a good way to world build while also making it interesting. Well, if you guys would like to comment on literally anything else, feel free.
Yeah, I guess a good way to do exposition to have a character explain it, especially if it's an adult explaining it to a younger person.
Yeah. This was partly. Have you guys heard of I've shared it on the Discord a few times. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children.
I have heard of the movie, but I've never seen it. I've never read the book.
Okay, the book is just like this. You have Jacob and his grandfather, and they're peculiars. Well, his grandfather is, and he's like a Holocaust World War II survivor. So he's telling these stories to Jacob about that island off in the Wales where Wales, not in the Wales, in Wales, where he met with all these children with superpowers and stuff, and then the main character's like, wow, he's mesmerized by it as a kid, and that's the prologue. And then the first chapter is when the grandfather dies, and he goes searching for the place to get closure, and then he finds that all of it was real. This was inspired a lot by this same structure. You got Urim telling his family about the Sky Kingdom and about the dangers of the exiles who were thrown out of it, who manipulate people, and then all that stuff about like the things that are up there and those crazy descriptions. That's all going to come into play later.
Cool.
Yep. Anything you guys didn't like, please let me know.
I think part of it was like I didn't quite see how the two like plot lines connected. It was kind of it seemed very abrupt where we go from the story to some kind of action scene near the end. At least that's what it came off as to me.
That was probably due to me cutting out.
Probably.
Yeah, I tried to flow into each situation, like the story as it's changing tone, and then when the soldier, he makes it more of a darker tone, and then so are you talking about like when he was telling the story about the ocean and the sharks?
I didn't get that was a story.
Yeah, that was a Urim. Yeah, I might have cut out when I said that. Urim was saying that to the soldier. He was talking about the ocean, and he was talking about the sharks, and he was basically telling him metaphorically that when he was when the soldier was accusing him of spreading lies about these obviously very dangerous things in this world, the father was basically clarifying that no, we know sharks are dangerous, but we also know the ocean is rich and vast. We need to know about all of it so we best know how to handle the entire thing. We can't just ignore that the ocean doesn't exist because we're afraid of sharks. That was basically what he was doing.
Yeah, that seemed clear enough.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then as you saw, he got really pissed. he didn't take that well at all.
And then he got
violent.
possessed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, not necessarily possessed, influenced. Like possession would be like, something entering into you and like taking you over, right? Or am I mistaking the terminology?
You're about right.
Yeah.
Well, it strangled him.
Yeah. It was basically that was supposed to imply that it was the reason why he was getting angry like that, and why he was reacting in that way. You'll see more of that later. And I guess, yeah, if there's nothing else you guys dislike, I guess we will continue on scripture as we hear about Mordred. Done. I've been wanting to tell you this forever. I know exactly what you're doing. I caught it a mile away. As soon as I heard the showcase about the goddess's temple and them, and then Mordred kicking them out because they were selling in it, I went, wait a minute! I know this! I know this. I know what you're doing there, and I've just noticed it ever since. I'm like, okay, this is a scriptural New Testament story, but told in a new way.
Very much so.
I caught that a mile away. You see, I'm scripturally minded clearly because I'm writing about this. So yeah, I caught that like it was nothing.
I think everybody did. I think everybody did.
I noticed that too. Tarek was like, Done, is this the Bible?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
man.
and then I go into the weird at least two other people, the weird theological stuff around LDS, the LDS afterlife.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep, I think I've taken enough time already. Sorry if that went on. I was really worried that this would be too long. As I was editing it, I was like, holy crap, this is a really long scene. But what did you guys think of the length? Because a lot of chapters are going to be just like that.
Never apologize for writing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I can't really talk because the chapter I'm reading from now is 24 pages. I think I'm gonna have to cut into 2 chapters. And I think a lot of my chapters are gonna have to be cut into more than 1 chapter, actually.
I mean, honestly, today I was reading from the end of one chapter and the beginning of another.
Yeah, and that happens to me too.
Hopefully, I hope you guys thought it was juicy and had a lot of good stuff going for it and wasn't just boring.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we did. That's very good.
I'm very excited to share chapter 1. That one's my favorite. You'll see what I mean.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, cool.
Okay. So some context. So the story is kind of getting into a place where the High Priestess is coming to see if Mordred is who he says he is, and Mordred has just got finished with a basically a petition thing and is staying by himself alone trying to figure out his next move at the top of the castle. An hour later, Mordred lounged on top of the castle, right in the crook of a buttress, gazing out over his city. "I'm finally alone," he murmured, absently snacking on an apple he'd created. "Just me and my thoughts." Sighing, he settled himself more securely and took another bite of the apple. He always needed solitude on occasion, even when he'd had a perfect vessel. Now that his energy was limited, he needed it more than ever to settle himself. Once he was done, he casually destroyed the apple core and created a meal of finely cooked and seasoned meat, vegetables, and bread on a plain metal table. "So, what do I do?" Keeping the plate balanced on his legs, Mordred started to slice bits of meat apart with his clawed fingernails. Once he was satisfied with the size of the bites, he pinched the small chunks between his nails so he could pop them into his mouth. "Well, I don't have much that I can do." He absently created a chunk of wood and a paring knife so that he could start carving a wolf statue. "I need to get out there, serving the people, protecting them from demon attacks. Done as much good as I can, much here as I can, but the planning stage still needs to happen." Finished off the outline, then began putting the finer details of the fur, teeth, and claws in a small wolf. Probably wondering where I am. Worried they'll stir up the water like I did a few days ago. Casually, he spun his knife through his fingers, then carved the eyes into the wolf before setting it aside. There was something satisfying about making a work of art with his bare hands as opposed to simply creating something out of thin air. He built his mother's statue out of marble with a hammer and chisel, though he'd had to have a great deal of practice before that. It had taken him several days and nights of constant work, ensuring that every detail was perfect, and then the effort of making the statue indestructible and permanently emanate light from inside its core. But in the end, it had been worth it. He lightly ran his claws along on the stones, then chewed on the corner of his mouth. It appeared that leaving wasn't the problem at the moment, since his enemies would be moving against him as quickly as they could. He built up some goodwill among the people here, either by establishing firmer codes of conduct or by healing every single one of the injured or maimed within the city walls, and even a few that had traveled several days to get healed by him. Soon this place would be the site of pilgrimages from people either coming to him themselves or bringing their injured family members or friends to him. It's going to hurt them when they find I know I've left to go on a recruitment drive, but if Cat, Leilana, and the others who I've endowed with power remain, they'll be able to hail most of the travelers. He thought as he created another block of wood, this one slightly larger than the first. Closing his eyes, he set at a silent prayer for guidance, pleading with the Eternal Mother to grant him wisdom and direction. He would love to speak with her face to face as Alexandria and Guinevere had, but even in his old life, he'd only experienced a feeling of peace or direction when he'd prayed, or when a decision had been made. As he prayed, he felt something begin growing inside his mind. Unconsciously, he began carving at the wood, eyes still closed as his knife was guided in creating what felt like a ball of odd yet intricate craftsmanship. Finally, he opened his eyes and saw that he had created a small ball with a set of openings at the top to allow him a line of sight into the hollow top of the orb. Narrowing his eyes, Mordred turned it over in his hands, feeling another set of instructions pop into his head. I'll need to wait to complete this, he murmured as he stood up and pocketed it in his long jacket. I need to set up the communication devices and the soul tether first. It should be done in a couple days at this rate. That had been hard, feeling like he was at the brink of exhaustion, pouring energy into the coiled spike and small discs that would allow him to communicate with anybody who had one of the connected objects. Dreading the inevitable exhaustion he would be forced to go through, Mordred slid down the slanted roof to the edge of the precipice, then adjusted his gravitational pull to go down the wall. Instinctively, he grabbed one of the flagpoles extending from the wall and dropped into the window. As soon as he was inside, he regretted his decision to go in so impulsively. Several servants leaped back in surprise, clearly terrified of what looked like a goblin before they could recognize him. Sorry, he raised his hands, putting on a reassuring smile. I should have come through more carefully. The servants shook their heads and quickly gave him assurances that they had only been surprised, and that the Lord Carol did not have any need to be worried about them. Mordred concealed his slight discomfort with how these people looked at him, as if he were a divine personage. He'd never been comfortable with being treated like a god. Even when he'd been teaching Guinevere's principles, Mordred had disguised himself as a regular mage, rather than as an elder one. It had been nice mingling with the people, not worrying about anything beyond traveling to the next town or the next person he'd help. Now that his status as herald had been elevated even beyond what it had been before his death, he'd been similar in station to a king, but a king who anybody could approach. Now, he was holy, a very different reaction than what he was used to. Well, that's what happened when you're the herald of the only god they believe in anymore. Smiling, he nodded to them before walking to the secret rooms he created in the depths of the castle a long time ago. Thankfully, despite the changes to the other parts of the city, the castle remained the same. including his carefully made secret passages. Finally, he reached the wall and carefully activated the mechanism that would allow him to enter his small sanctum. In the center was a ring with a golden sword rising from the center, the intricately wrought weapon, seemingly unadorned with gems or other finery, but the hilted blade was a lacework of lines and symbols that glowed with a fiery energy. Breathing in, Mordred sat down in front of the weapon, focusing all his power on the device. Immediately, his strength was sapped away, causing him to gasp and his arm to go limp. Gritting his teeth, Mordred reached over and began scrawling as much information as he could while he poured energy into his sword. Abruptly, it clicked into place and his power rushed back into him. Gasping, he stood up and looked down at his notes, realizing he'd put down roughly a page regarding Crayful, an elder one who could take on the form of an elderly man in a red hood with a permanently blood-stained broken sword while working. That was quicker than I thought. He glanced down at his arm where the weapons were housed, and though everything below his neck was covered in black clothing, only a few spots of silver broke up the stable cloth. Flexing his left hand, and as had become his habit, Mordred picked up the discs. Maybe it took only a few minutes fueling the device with everything he had before it was finished. Huh. Mordred glanced down at his pocket where the small ball was safely secured. Well, now that is interesting. Calmly sweat wiped up the other metal disc and slid them into the pocket opposite the wooden ball. Rubbing his forehead, Mordred exited the room and then walked to his own apartment. There you are! Kate and Varys were standing in his rooms, both looking very annoyed. The old man looked particularly irritated. So you've been cooped up in that damned hideout of yours this whole time. I've been working. Mordred pulled out the finished disc and tossed it to Varys. There. You can use it to communicate with me once I leave. What? Kate asked. Where are you going? Not sure yet, Mordred admitted, pulling out a small wooden ball. I'm working on something that will allow me to determine where the best way to go is. That will guide you? Varys sounded skeptical, which wasn't out of the ordinary, really. Are you serious? Deadly. Mordred tossed it from one hand to the other. I've already paired it with another device. He pulled out the other disc he'd made as he replaced the orbit-sized jacket. Soon enough, it'll be ready. I'll just be walking slowly for a couple days before I leave. You're leaving? Varys rubbed his eyes. Why must you do these things? Because I've spent enough time cooped up in here. Mordred gestured around the room with one hand and paused his communication disc in his pocket with the other. I need to get out there, try to rally support, and make sure that the people are made safe. Fine, but at least take some people with you, Kate insisted, folding her arms. Varys nodded in agreement, but didn't say anything. Take Kara with you. Mordred refrained from rolling his eyes with difficulty. No, I need to move fast and not worry about sleep. Fine. Varys cut him off. But before you leave, there's someone you need to meet. Oh, he's finally here. Mordred raised an eyebrow. It's taken him long enough. There's a good reason for that. Varys smirked slightly. He's been working on creating an infrastructure using the money that you so gracefully provided. Well, I'm glad he's using it well. Mordred shrugged. All right, I'll meet him. He's waiting in the council room. Kate motioned toward the door. He's an interesting person. I imagine you'll immediately get into his good graces by providing some of his favorite foods. Which are? Mordred asked, making a circular motion with his hand. Here. Varys handed Mordred a piece of paper. I asked him for a list. Mordred accepted the paper and looked it over. Huh. He raised an eyebrow. This is an impressive and normally expensive palette, by what I've discovered during this era. Especially these duck beaver eggs, since the creatures that make them are so rare. Sighing, Varys nodded. What about the rest? Can you make it? Yes, I should be able to. Honestly, the most complicated are the multiple-piece dishes like the pheasants covered in blackberry sauce. Mordred folded up the paper and slid into his jacket. How many pockets do you have in that jacket of yours? Kate asked, shaking her head in wonder. 6, Mordred said honestly. It's rather useful having a number of small pockets with useful odds and ends in them. No argument there, especially if it's knives, Kate nodded. Come on, let's get going. Dacus was exactly as Varys had described. A chubby, roly-poly fellow with a big smile and a beard trying to cover his multiple chins. Grinning, Mordred walked over to the portly fellow and took his hand in a warm grasp. I've been looking forward to this, Dacus remarked, taking a seat at the table. At least for that feast you promised, Varys, he nodded to the older man. When is the first course, by the way? He patted his large stomach. Eating only lightly to save room. I don't think I'll keep you waiting. Mordred patted the table and created 4 dishes. They did 3 dishes, each one with a different kind of food. Quail with a special curry and sugar sauce, beef with an assortment of vegetables, a stew with an assortment of vegetables, and finally, a basket of various fruits, mostly bananas and pears, with a pineapple set in the center. Dacus's jaw dropped. You are not serious, he gestured to the food. You can simply make food out of nothing? Yes. Mordred opened his hand and held out a gold ingot that had been used as coinage during his time. And more besides. Frowning, Dacus peered down at the gold. Then his jaw dropped when they began multiplying. So you're this Harold chap I've been hearing all about. Dacus shook his head in wonder. I thought it was a mad rumor about some demigod or whatever. Seems I was wrong. Abruptly he snapped his fingers. So that's where you got that gold, Varys old bean. Dacus cut off a chunk of pineapple and started eating the soft interior. I thought you'd managed to secure some booty on your trip into the woods, or maybe robbed someone. Suppose that I was right, just not about the particulars. Yeah, Varys said sardonically. We now have unlimited funds. Yes, but there is a danger in that. Dacus raised a finger. So far, you've been smart about only using as much as you've needed, but eventually all that gold is going to devalue the substance. The best thing that we can do is create small amounts of consumable resources, like spices and wood, so that we can send them to places where we can sell them. Sounds like a good plan. Mordred nodded. So, how far have your preparations gone? Well, all that gold has served to provide us with quite a bit of a starting hand at the table. Dacus reached down and pulled out a large set of folders. Eagerly, he handed it to Mordred before grabbing a quail and chewing on it. Ah! No bones! He exclaimed, licking his fingers. How incredible! I do hate those damned things. Varys coughed, which immediately focused Dacus on what was important. Anyway, we now have a large network of informants scattered throughout the major kingdoms, though it's mostly focused on various cities across Northern Bard, some very highly placed to the amount I was able to give them. I've also begun creating a large mercantile empire with the purchase of several merchants' caravans, charters, and multiple ships. Hopefully, I'll be able to give them cargo with this fine gentleman's aid. Give me a list and I'll provide it, Mordred shrugged. I'll make wagons of whatever you need. Wine, food, spices, just name it. Dacus grinned and took another quail and quaffed it. Good, that will be a great help. I already have my informants giving me pertinent information regarding any resource sources that they might need. I was thinking I could buy it up when it's common, but now that you have this miracle man, we can simply cut the middleman and skip to the profit. Mordred shook his head, placing his hand on the table and scraping his fingernails across the wood. If they're struggling, we provide as a gesture of goodwill. That is my condition. If it is simply a luxury item or something they want, then we will sell them at its regular price so that we can fund our endeavor. And what exactly is this endeavor? Dacus leaned forward. Still contentedly snacking on his food. Varys has been quite cagey about this whole thing. I'd like to get some answers. Well, here's the thing, Dacus. Varys rubbed his eyes. I didn't want to write down what was exactly going on, since you think I was insane or had lost all my principles. Oh, really? Dacus paused in his wolfish eating, a sauce-laden quail egg in his hand. How so? Kate grinned and nodded to Mordred. He's a demigod, and he's here to help us against others of his kind who have broken open hell itself to unleash an army of demons upon us. She shrugged. That's the basic gist. Dacus's mouth dropped open, completely unaware of the sauce dripping onto his pants. What? Glance between Varys and Kara, then at Mordred. You're not playing a joke on me, are you? Quite. It's a... Nope. Kate shrugged. Now I see how you feel every time we ask you that question, Mordred. Your empathy warms my heart. Mordred was more than happy to let the sarcasm drip from his voice. Anyway, yes, that's how I'm able to do what I've been doing. I'm not just a powerful mage. Well, I suppose the world is a bit bigger than I first thought it was. Dacus finally remembered the leg in his hand and took a bite. Well, at least we have you on our side. Yeah, but there's about 20, and a few of them are more powerful than I am, Mordred admitted. Oh, I see. Dacus paused with a spoonful of beef stew near his mouth. But until then, I suppose this is probably the best deal I'm going to get, am I right? Probably, Mordred affirmed. Well, I suppose that this is as good at a time as any to tell you something that will interest our fine Herald chap in particular. Dacus reached into his pocket and pulled out a small letter. Dutifully, he handed it to Mordred, then paused. I'm quite sorry. I've completely forgotten my manners. What was your name? My name is Mordred, he said mildly as he took the letter. Somewhat impatient, he opened the letter, then read it out to save time. As per your request to send out any out of the ordinary information to you with all haste, we wish to inform you that the High Priestess Maeve, given Emina C, has begun a journey to the city of Black Lake in order to ascertain the validity of the claims of the man proclaiming himself the herald of the goddess. She is traveling with a full entourage of 1.5, including the famed Victorian, Laviarna, and 2 high mages. If it turns out to be false, Queen Annalana will unleash the full might of the Northern Bard military against them. Kate whistled and adjusted her sleeves. Well, considering the fact there's a very large army close to us, that's going to be quite dangerous. Clearly unsettled, Varys grimaced and started cracking his knuckles. At least they've been busy taking care of patrolling the area, but as soon as they get the word, they will attack, he declared. Not if I can convince the High Priestess that I am who I say I am. Mordred stood up, pouring more energy into the orb. He had to finish it, even if he felt awful while doing it. His vision blurred and he had to latch onto the chair with his good hand to support himself. Abruptly, he felt the click of the final piece sliding into place as the magic finished its work. Shaking his head, he let his power surge back into him and flush out any drowsiness or dizziness left. I don't think you'll be able to do much, Ferris said carefully. For some reason, Kate seemed just as nervous as her husband. Laviarna is extremely fanatical, and the law has changed since you were here. She knows it in and out. Yes, but I've spent this time gaining as much knowledge of the faith as possible. Most of the rituals and a few precepts that humans created without me. Besides, I know all the signs associated with me already, since I'm the only one who can give them. They will have to believe me. Mordred leaned back in his chair. There are many things about the faith that I taught that stayed around, and a lot that have changed. However, I'm aware of all of them, at least at this point. The only thing that I do not have access to are the sacred texts that are held in the vaults of Guinevere's palace. Most of them are secret histories and a few obscure rituals based on the inquiries I've been able to make out about them. Well, glad you've kept yourself busy, Ferris muttered. Well, if you're leaving to go meet her, you should probably know something before you go. And that is, Mordred asked. Maeve and Arthur were friends a long time ago. Kate said finally, eyes looking slightly sad. Very good friends. Ferris's voice was uncharacteristically cautious. In fact, they thought they were going to get married before Maeve was chosen to enter the priesthood. It was rather hard on the both of them. For a moment, Mordred wondered why this was relevant. Then he remembered. Oh no, he rubbed his eyes. I'm wearing Arthur's body. And that's the end.
Well,
Wait, what? What was that cliffhanger? Man,
yeah, that's
quite
good.
enjoying this story. Sorry.
Yes. So essentially, to explain it, he basically hijacked a possession that was going to happen and is now in the body of a dead guy.
Oh yeah, I forgot you gave him the ability to do that.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily that it's an ability, that there was a ritual that was already happening and he just stepped into the docking port, as it were.
So, what was that bit about the lady who Arthur was going to marry, but that's actually Mordred's body, so the lady's going to be in love with Mordred now?
So basically, they don't know. So the High Priestess Maeve was originally going to marry Arthur before she got selected to join the priesthood. And Arthur got married to Kara instead. But now Arthur's dead and Mordred is wearing his body.
So the High Priestess lady has the hots for Mordred, not knowing that he's actually Arthur, and not knowing that he actually isn't Arthur.
It'll depend.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that a spoiler?
Let's go with yes and Rapho.
Okay, that's certainly interesting. And what else was there? Oh, and Mordred and the Fat Shepherd are going to go into business using Mordred's powers, but they're also going to be fighting demons.
Yep.
Does that make them capitalists?
Well, the guy who suggested using his Jesus powers to make money was almost certainly capitalist.
I will say, Dunn, I quite like how you're making the Pharisees. I mean, my bad. The characters react to Mordred. It's pretty funny too. Seeing him just like, yes, here's some meals. They're like, you can make meals out of thin air. Like, yes, I can. It's quite easy. Watch. And it's just the little things, the little things such as when he when he said and he waved, and you said the way you wrote it was he waved his arm around in a circle or his hand around in a circle. I like those little inflections. It gives the personality, and I quite enjoy that.
Mhm.
You can make loaves out of the bread out of the very stones,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
it's not recommended.
Yeah. At
Water
least
into
for
wine.
once. Yeah.
Watch, next time he's gonna walk on water as they're on their way to a kingdom or something.
Yeah, he's probably there's probably a spell for that.
And
You
you'll
know,
say something.
you should have him. You should have him walk on lava in a volcano. I don't know. Find some way to get a volcano in the plot and just have him walk across the lava. That'd be
I
so
haven't-
cool.
And have him say something sarcastic while doing so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like jump in. No, I'm kidding. Don't jump in.
Funny you should mention lava. That's actually a crippling fear of his.
Oh.
Since
Why?
he was because he was chained in lava for 3,000 years.
Oh,
There's
wow.
hell.
Oh, trauma. Okay, fair enough.
And we are going to get underground molten lava. Or if any of you has played Dark Souls, the Lost Izalith was a very heavy inspiration for the appearance of the device of this landscape.
That's the You Died game.
Yep.
Don't remember the lava, but I do remember the You Died. You died.
Yep. Any thoughts, feedback, any way to make this less obvious? Or just go with the obvious? Obvious, try and get published by Shadow Mountain, the main LDS publisher.
I'd say go obvious.
Okay.
I mean, whatever works. Obvious isn't necessarily bad as long as it's well written,
Hmm. Okay.
as Lewis could tell you.
Can you repeat the question again? What was it?
Do you think I should dial down the obvious or just kind of run with it?
I say run with it. It's pretty fun.
Nice. Okay. Nice.
Yep. You and I are in a similar boat. I think mine's going to be blindly obvious soon to come what's going on, but it's still fun to be just a little bit vague, to make things a little bit more original for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already directly mentioned forming a union in my one, so I mean, I'm not in a position to criticize.
Blasphemy!
Oh man, I'm looking forward to seeing where Shanna's journey goes next too.
Yeah, I got a discussion of privilege as well lined up.
How far are you along, Carl? How far are you along in Waters of Akra?
Oh boy, I'm
Act 1, 2, 3, halfway, third. You're only in. Okay, neat.
Yeah. I think the way I've sliced it up, I'm kind of getting close to the end of Act 1, but still,
I mean, she's still a teenager and she's still at school.
basically, yeah.
And what about you, Dunn? Where's your progress? I don't know what your book's called.
Night of the Abyss is finished.
Oh, the one you're sharing with us now?
Yeah, it's completely written. I'm just about I think it's about let's see. Let me see where at the spot where we're at, in terms of where we've read. I think we're on something it's. The book itself is 140 pages, about a little over, about 74K words.
All right.
Not too long then.
And what about you, Balerion? You in your Act 1, Act 2, halfway, close to the end?
The bit that I read to you is from
Okay, I got
near the beginning of Act 2, but it's quite early on in the. I guess you could say Act 2. I'm not thinking in terms of acts when I'm writing, but I guess you could say it's near the beginning of Act 2. But it's
Neat.
but it's pretty early on because I've written a whole globe of stuff since then. It takes me a long time to read these because I can't read every week, and sometimes to vary up, I read bits from parodies and things that I've completed, which people might find amusing. What was I going to say? Where I am now, I'm in chapter 20. I'm working on chapter 26 at the moment, and I'm pretty near the end. I'm relatively near the end. I'm in somewhere approaching the last act at the moment where I'm writing, but nowhere near it where I'm reading. If that answered the question at all.
Yeah, pretty cool. I must apologize for being late and not being able to hear any of yours. Keep an eye on the comments, or maybe I might just, I don't know, I might just ping you in the Discord. Well, one or the other, because on Sunday I will listen to what I missed, like a YouTube video.
Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Yep, I think we will call it good for today. I think that we're going to try and blitz to the finish as much as we can with Mr. Borman's awful Lord of the Rings script. And from there, I think we'll do a Kenobi, but I don't think we'll be doing anything else this week, since I'm going to be involved in a job search for the next little bit.
Yeah, maybe we can finish Borman in a couple of episodes because it might be too rushed if we try to do the whole thing in one go. Like 90 pages, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 90, so we'll probably do the next 45. But no stream tomorrow. I am doing a thing with Mr. Skids on Zack Snyder's Justice League. First half this week, second half next week. I don't know when he'll be releasing it, but should be interesting to say the least. I'm not excited to watch it again. But I think that we will call it good for today. I will see you guys later. And I think we will end it with this one.
Just
Oh
look.
boy.
What do you see?
A man fucking a horse.